Richard, how are you?
I'm well, Tim. Pleasure to be
Good.
here. Thank you for
Thank you.
having me.
Thank you for coming on. It was actually Jim Clark that suggested I drop you a message to see if I could get you on, and here you are. God bless Jim Clark again.
Absolutely. I was only recently made Jim's acquaintance. We've had many mutual
Okay,
friends, but yeah, what a wonderful man.
lovely. I think he's probably him and Martin Goulding have had the most shout outs on this podcast. So wonderful people. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly consistent in terms of gigs for the rest of the year. I've got a trip to Italy at the end of May to go and do some more work with the boutique tone
Okay,
company who do those Kemper and Quad Cortex backs. They're wonderful guys and really,
okay,
really fun to work with. So looking forward to going out to do some more with them. And then a bit of a backlog of product demos and stuff that I need to get done
yeah.
here, as well as a few remote recording jobs, as well as slowly trying to push my own YouTube channel forward. So the usual plate spinning problems that everybody has, I think.
Yes, I think that's trying to manage. I mean, particularly a YouTube channel. I tried a YouTube channel back when lockdown kicked in, and I was like, "Oh, this is the perfect opportunity." The amount of fucking effort just to keep it weekly episodes, but then you got to think of episodes that people are going to want to watch. Like, what's interesting? Now you got to edit it. Now you got to color grade it. Now you got to record it. And I
Yeah,
was trying to do that with two kids in the house. It was like, oh, fucking hell,
I
man!
can imagine.
It was literally like trying to run a production company on my own.
It
It's
is. That is exactly what it's like. I mean, how broad our skill sets have to be these days is quite staggering. I really enjoy it. I love learning about that side of it and
mm,
have derived great joy from learning about videography and color grading and all of those kind of things. But
yeah,
yeah, it is a lot. And the overall standard of all of this content is so high now.
yeah.
It's a real necessity to get a grip on it, but it is time consuming for sure.
Yeah, like the quality now is that like the baseline for what's acceptable is now kind of 4K, well lit, good sound.
Absolutely.
It's like when it first kicked off. Well, I remember when I started uploading videos in like 2009 or 10. It was just one camera in a dimly lit room, and that was good enough. And I was like, oh look, this is doing quite well. But now it's like you multiple camera angles, color graded quality, editing. It's ridiculous.
It's interesting. It's been an interesting phenomenon to observe
Mm,
because it's gone to such extremities. It's gone to the point where obviously this has been a talking point rather a lot recently, where it's gone beyond simply good production value to something that is not necessarily honest anymore. And then
yeah.
you've had a kind of counter movement to that kind of thing with like Tom Bukovac's channel, which
Mm,
is like 2005 production values, and God bless him. I'm so
yeah.
glad that it is. I think many people derived a lot of, just like a refreshment from his approach to that kind of thing. It just felt a very, very honest, and yeah,
Yes.
lot of respect for Tom for that.
Yeah, I mean, Tom's one of those. Every time I listen to him play, it's like he's not playing anything difficult, but it sounds just magic.
Yeah. Studio guys. It's always the
Just
thing, studio guys.
yeah, and I actually love watching his videos. Like he usually just sets up a phone in his kitchen, and he's sitting there with a tiny little Vox amp or something, and he's just playing, like having a beer and just talking about, "Here, there's a thing to do." It looks and sounds terrible, but what he's telling you, what he's giving you, is priceless.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got people,
And rare. He's a dying breed in some respects in terms
yeah,
of like the quantity and the quality of the work that he's done.
yeah,
There are still a few guys doing it, but yeah, Tom's discography or list of credits is intimidating to say the least. So yeah,
yeah,
absolute gold. Just listening to him talk, you learn so much.
yeah. It's a wonderful thing. Like it's brought everybody a little bit closer. Social media, for all of its faults, you're able to actually get in contact with some of these people. You have to speak to them. Like I've
Yeah,
had chats with people like Andy Wood. He's been on the podcast, and
amazing.
even just have a chat with some of these people is just like especially during lockdown. Most of them were setting up guitar lessons. It's like fucking brilliant.
Mhm.
I can have a guitar lesson with fucking Mike Stern. Excellent. It's going
Yeah,
to cost me $200, but that could be worth an hour of my time.
absolutely. I had one with Sean Tubbs.
Okay. I don't know who Sean Tubbs is.
No.
Who's who?
Well, that's your homework for today.
Well, I'm writing this down. I always go on. Who's that?
Well, I mean, he's become known predominantly for his demo videos on YouTube, which are exceptional. But Sean's been around for years and years and years.
Right.
He started off on the kind of worship scene around California in like the back end of the 80s and early 90s.
All right.
So he did like a lot of studio work for years and years and years, and then transitioned into the role as Carrie Underwood's touring guitar player for like
Okay.
over a decade.
Wow.
But he's just probably my all-time favorite musician. Incredible. Don't have enough good things to say about Sean. And also the sweetest dude. So humble.
I'll hook
You
him up.
must do. Yeah.
Even
Buckle
if
up.
yeah, even if it's just to consume whatever he's put out online.
Yeah. Yeah, you must. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you get started in music?
I started when I was about 13.
Mm.
My dad had a friend who was a bit of a hellraiser. Think young Jack Nicholson vibes. And he
Right.
used to sneak me cassettes. One of those cassettes, which I didn't realize at the time because they were all unnamed, was Appetite for Destruction.
Nice.
So within the first like 10 seconds of that delay,
Yeah, yeah.
palm muted line, I was like, something turned on in my
Clicked.
head, and then
Yeah.
that was it. So got heavily involved in music at school. We were lucky to go somewhere where there was a lot of like extracurricular stuff, loads of performance opportunities, did music through college.
Yeah.
Went to ACM, which was wonderful at the time. Actually, had some wonderful tutors like Michael Caswell and Jamie Humphreys, who were
Yeah.
massive influence. And then at the time, ACM had this great thing called the BDC, which I think was called the Business Development Center, where
Mhm.
they set up external auditions for ACM students.
Okay.
So I got into the routine of auditioning for things quite regularly, started picking up bits of stuff, started my own band. And then on the back end of ACM, I started getting invited to some auditions in London. So I did the sort of pop thing for a little bit, pop touring, which was great. And then came back to the Midlands, was still doing some stuff in London, but started picking up some work on the kind of Amdram musical
Mhm.
theatre thing, doing pit band stuff
Yeah.
and teaching. And then, I mean, man, yeah, the usual kind of trajectory really. Sort of started growing your network, started doing the corporate and the function stuff as well, still doing bits of session stuff, doing lots of theatre stuff, started working in a recording studio. So learned all
Okay.
of the audio engineering stuff there as well.
Yeah.
Original bands running alongside all of this sort of stuff. Started doing like touring theatre shows for like a number of years.
Mm.
And then, yeah, it's just sort of, it's like everybody really. It's kind of, well, maybe not like everybody. The one thing that I've noticed with me, which I think has oddly been a disadvantage in some ways, is that I sort of had a hunger to learn everything.
Yeah.
And so I kept going into very slightly different directions, like the studio thing. And then I was working in library music for a while and composing music for like short independent films, and then into the sort of video world that we're in now with the YouTube thing. So yeah, I've done loads over the years, which has been great. But I also kind of get the sense that sometimes there's real merit in just kind of doubling down with
Mm.
your thing
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just doing that, defiantly for however many years. So, which is kind of what I'm trying to do now. I have a sort of like steady rotation of gigs. Have you ever come across Musiversal, the sort of remote recording
No.
company? I was doing that for like a year as well, which is like a brutal workflow of doing like 10 sessions a day
Okay.
with all different people. It's like a remote workflow. So
Right.
you're working with people from all over the world. So that was really great for sort of sharpening the studio skill set, I suppose.
Yeah.
And although I'm not doing stuff with them at the moment, still do like a lot of remote session stuff.
Mhm.
But I'm really trying to just focus a bit more on the video stuff now and get that to a point where it's a bit more consistent, because that's always the challenge. It seems like something always comes to derail whatever plans you have for the
Always,
week
yeah.
and
Yeah.
requires immediate prioritization.
Yeah. So when you first started, so what was your kind of first couple of guitar lessons like, or the first year or two
Terrible.
of all right, okay, go on.
Yeah, terrible. No, honestly, my first couple of guitar lessons were group sessions, and
Mm.
obviously we were quite young, and it was just chaos. It was just like five kids making a load of racket, and like the treat for the lesson was that the instructor would press the distortion button on all of our amps and just let us
Bang away.
make a terrible racket for like 10 minutes. Yeah, terrible. Like as a teacher, yeah, he wasn't great.
Okay.
But after that, I got a better tutor who I'm still friends with today, who was, I suppose it was repertoire centric. He was
Hmm.
throwing a lot of different styles at me to see what stuck. And I think it was a case of finding something that I was excited about to practice it over that hurdle you have when you're just
Mm,
starting out, which is that there's like a physical barrier where everything feels a bit awkward
yeah,
and you really need to persist to develop your calluses and for everything to start feeling a bit more natural.
yeah,
And then, yeah, once that clicked, we were off to the races, so to
yeah.
speak.
Was there a particular tune or chord or riff or anything where things you thought like this is now starting to feel less awkward and more like I'm into a bit of a flow? Like you said, it clicks.
I was pretty obsessive about learning Guns N' Roses stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing that I would stick with for hours and hours and hours. That probably was the extent of my musical aspirations
Okay.
for the first like year or so of playing was just, well, yeah, if I can play Guns N' Roses songs, then I've therefore completed music and I'm done then.
Yeah, yeah. Until you meet Miles Davis.
Yeah, well, quite.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Like you mentioned, like that physical barrier. Like, what do you think it is about, or where do you think people generally quit, or why do you think people quit?
That's a good question.
And this could be at any stage of their career, like not necessarily people who are just starting guitar, but they're like you. Maybe people have finished college, they're back there trying to get gigs in the
Oh
world, and they're
man,
like,
that's a broad question. So
yeah,
I think in terms of why people quit when they are beginners, I think part of it depends on where the intrinsic motivation was coming from in the first place.
yeah,
Whether it was something that they really were interested in, or whether it's something that they would just kind of push towards because mum and dad thought that it would be
mm,
good for them to have an extracurricular activity.
yeah,
I was obsessed with guitars for years
mm,
before I ever had a guitar,
okay,
just fascinated by them. So I think that's probably the first thing. I think after that point, if they are involved in music because they're interested in some way or it means something to them, the key is probably finding the sort of repertoire that really resonates with them. I mean, what's odd is that these days, a phenomenon that I observed for a while was that a lot of younger people didn't seem to really have a music taste as such. There was this
yeah,
odd thing where people would know songs because of TikTok, but
yeah,
if you asked them who their favorite band was, they wouldn't be able to give you an answer.
yeah, yeah. No, I've noticed that as well for like the last couple of years. Like students, first of all, students not listening to music, and those that do, like you said, they don't have like a band or a singer or an artist that they latch onto. It's just playlists. I had someone come up with a great. Can't remember where I heard it. Like there was a reel or something I saw on Instagram or YouTube. I think it might have been a stand-up routine. He was talking about music. It's like people don't like have favorite bands. They have playlists. And it's like, well, what music do you listen to? He's like, oh, I like um, rock and roll. So, all right. Well, so who do you listen to? Who's your favorite artist? So, oh, I don't know. I just put on the rock and roll playlist on Spotify. And he said that's the equivalent of saying, who's your favorite author? So I don't really like the author, but I really like Helvetica Bold.
Yeah. Yeah. It
So,
is
well,
odd.
how can you not? Yeah, I mean, it's bonkers. I spoke to my daughter about this, who's 14. I noticed that she listens to music the way that I used to listen to music, like very intense, very involved. You know, she listens, she plays, she's always listening. And I said to her, you know, some people don't listen to music. There are people that come to music lessons with me, they don't listen to music. And she was like, why? It's like, I don't know. I was hoping you could answer that. Why is that? And
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that the pool of music that is available to people is so overwhelming that to narrow it down to say a band or a couple of bands is
Yeah.
almost impossible.
And the way that music is distributed now in terms of how it reaches people's ears is dramatically different. So I'm not
Yeah.
surprised that this is the case. And I'm also happy to say that it's definitely not universally the case. You know, I've
Mm.
taught plenty of students at BIM who are ferociously passionate about specific artists. So it is still a
Yeah.
thing. I think it's just there's a broader cultural shift in that
Yeah.
once upon a time, sort of taste making facility may have been, you know, the radio or then the TV or through films or something. And it's changed into something that's different and a little bit more disparate and a little bit more faster moving.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's
Yeah.
still room for people to find music they love, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just. I mean, I guess there's always been those cultural shifts, especially like even if you went from just listening to the radio and or going to concert halls, and then all of a sudden you could buy records in like the early 20s, and it's like, well, now people aren't going to go to concerts because they're just going to buy the record and listen to it at home. So there's that cultural shift. So yeah, I just find it odd. I especially find it odd when people pay for their children to go to music lessons and they're not listening to music, and it's just very odd. Some of them even haven't bought their kids instruments. It's like, well, you've spent 600 quid so far on music lessons and your son doesn't have a guitar.
I think sometimes it's hard to detach from your own kind of paradigm, how you see music and what it means to you, because it was
Mm,
something that I always struggled to get my head around, teaching students at BIM, because I go in there with the assumption that everybody's there because they want a career in music and they want to be a working musician and they want to be able to sustain themselves or eventually a family through music. And it's not the case. It's not. There's
mm,
actually, most of the time, there's probably in a group, if there's 10% of the students who actually have that aspiration, it's unusual. You know what I mean? A lot of the time, people are just there because they're not sure what they want to do yet. They're still feeling it out. They enjoy music. So therefore, they think they'll go study it. But yeah, it's a very, very, usually, I could tell when I had a new group there would usually be one or two students at most who I would look at and go, yeah, you're going to have a career in music.
mm.
And that would be it. And I'd usually
Yeah,
be right about it as well.
yeah. Okay. Well, to be honest, when I was at the ACM, there was probably, again, there was probably only two or three in the class who I thought, you'll do all right. But everyone that was there, barring two or three people, could play. All of
Mhm.
them could play. Everybody learnt the tunes for live performance. Everybody got up on the Friday to perform it. Everybody did their exams. Everyone showed up for the exam, or and it was they showed up throughout the whole year. I'm assuming now is that now not the case that people are just filtering out, and by the end of the year, you've probably only got two or three left.
Yeah, I mean, the attendance thing is a massive problem in
Yeah,
general. So you definitely see like the cohort kind of filters down over until yeah, you sometimes you are just left with like sort of three people in your class, which is ridiculous and it
yeah,
just does not make any sense to me at all. But that is the reality of it. But yeah, I mean, the other side of it is just that I had the same experience with you with ACM, which is that there were plenty of great players there, and the thing that really surprised me at that time was that I had a friend called Josh who was a fabulous guitar player. Could easily have gone and done the whole thing, but it just wasn't for him. He didn't want the musician lifestyle. I don't think he wanted the graft and the uncertainty
mm,
of having to figure out week by week, where work is coming from, all that kind of thing. And he just made a conscious decision, I think, to keep it as a hobby, as just
yeah,
something to enjoy, which is, it's not something I can personally relate to because I think most of us are obsessives, aren't we?
mm, yeah.
I can't imagine doing anything else really.
No,
But no, there is a different way. And in some ways, there are days where I've certainly wondered whether those people had the right idea because music's tough. It can be really tough.
yeah, and I think that's the thing that for me, when I think about why people quit, I think that's the point. It's like, well, I'm now gonna like, if it was as cliched as you're gonna have to give up every weekend, all of your weekends are gone. Like maybe most people are like, I'm not prepared to do that because most of my life kind of happens at the weekend. I've got work during the day. Weekends are for me. Now you got saying, "Oh, give that up." It's like, well, yeah, you have to give up maybe birthday parties as well. You have to give up anniversaries. You have to give up going to people's weddings because you've got to go and play at
Yeah.
a wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
Are people prepared to do that? And I think that's another defining moment. So if you are, then great. If you're not, well, you'll have to sit it out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm,
I think the other thing that I notice a lot is that there's a lack of realism about what the real world is like.
yeah,
I definitely see that, when people are at degree level these days, there's usually a real minority that have an accurate impression of the skill set they're going to need to be able to get work,
yeah,
basically. A lot of them live in a kind of suspended reality. And, you get to the end of your degree, they still can't sight read, they still don't have their fretboard knowledge down, they still are siloed in a particular style that they
Mm.
came in being interested in. So I think a lot of them have a rude awakening when they finish their degree and they wonder why, where are all the offers for record
Yeah.
deals and
Yeah.
sessions,
Yeah.
people banging on their door,
Yeah. We heard you
which
have a degree. Can you come in and tour with us?
yeah, exactly, which I understand. I do understand. I do
Yeah.
understand.
A friend of mine who I used to go to school with, she emailed me about 2 years ago. She said, "Oh, my son's just got into to ACM to do a degree." I was like, "Oh, that's amazing! I didn't even know he played." He's like, "Yeah, been playing guitar for a couple of years, and he's off doing his degree." And I was like, "That's really cool. I wish him all the best." And I was doing a show, and can't remember which one it was. And I sent her a message saying, "Look, I'm down in Portsmouth for the week, and I'm doing a show in a theatre. Does he want to come in and do a sit-in?" And she's like, "Oh, I'll go and check. I'll get back to you." And she came back about 2 days later and she said, "Would he be playing?" I was like, "No, no." So he'll sit in, he'll sit next to me, he'll look at how like an orchestra works, he'll listen, he'll have headphones, so he'll be able to listen to the MD, he'll see how like he'll just it's just there to him to get an idea and a feel for how an orchestra works. She went, Nah." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Nah." I was like, "Okay, we'll see what happens when the degree's over."
Wow. Yeah,
I was like,
that's
"Okay, all right, okay, fair enough." Maybe he didn't understand what it was. Maybe he went, "A theatre, sight reading, nah."
yeah,
But
perhaps.
can I ask a favour? Would you mind sort of keeping your eyes up a little bit?
Yes.
Sorry, you don't have to stare at me. It's just there's some good stuff, and if I use it for reels, it's just nice to see your face.
Yes, I will
Sorry.
try and
But
look at
yeah,
you a bit more.
and I found it really bizarre. Like maybe if when I was 19, if somebody offered me a sight reading sit-in, would I take it? I don't know that I would. But I think my mum probably
I
would have.
s I
She
suspect
would
you
have
would
said,
have.
"No, you should go because it sounds like a good opportunity."
I suspect you would have. I remember biting tutors' arms off if they offered
Mm,
that kind of thing while I
yeah,
was at ACM, and I suspect you would have been the same way.
yeah. Well, I didn't. Nobody really. When I was there, nobody talked about theatres or pit work. When it came to sight reading, it was just sight reading these classical pieces. That was it. Uh, Nobody. I didn't. Unfortunately, when I was there, I didn't have Pete Callard for any lessons, and I'm sure if I did, he would have said, "Pit work, pit work, pit work. West End, West End. Sight reading, sight reading, sight reading. Do it until you're 80. It's easy." But yeah, I did have some private lessons with him, and he did say, "If you're in my class, I would have beaten you over the head with that and melodic minor." So no, nobody mentioned melodic minor when I was there.
No, Pete's a wonderful
But
player. We had
mm,
him very, very briefly at ACM, but I think literally for a couple of classes before he had to go on tour or jump onto another show.
yeah.
But yeah, he's
What
great.
so what years were you there? Okay.
Until I want to say 2011, something like that. I had a year out between the first and second year of my degree to do band things, but yeah, that's around when I was there.
Oh, I was there a lot. I was there 2002 to 2003, so that shows my age. It makes me feel really old when I think back to it. It's like, fucking hell. I had Pete Friesen on a couple of months ago, and he was like, "When were you there?" I was like, "It was shit, 22 years ago."
Wow.
Fuck. I like being this age and having like vivid memories that are now quarter of a century old it kills me a little bit.
Jarring. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So ACM, BIM. What's your take on modern education in this time?
My concern is that in its current state, it's erased the bottom to some
Right.
extent. I'm sure, as I've heard many of your guests talk about, the same problems in that you have these privately owned institutions. The driving force, of course, is making money. The entry requirements gradually drop over time. And the
Mm,
problem is that when one institution lowers them, the others all feel like they have to do the same thing,
yeah.
because otherwise they're missing out on their potential cohort. And for that reason, I feel essentially, yes, that it's a race to the bottom because every valuable part of the audition process gradually gets disregarded.
Yeah.
Sight reading was the first thing to go. And
Yeah.
then the fretboard knowledge side of it gets whittled down until it's can you play one position of the minor pentatonic scale,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. And the problem is that for the students who are coming to these institutions being serious about music and being legitimately very promising players, it
Mm,
just puts them in a terrible position because you end up with a class that has such a broad spectrum of differentiation in their abilities
mm,
that it's nearly impossible to meet everybody where they're at. And what you really want to be doing is nurturing the students that have real promise. And what you are forced to do is to try and lift up some of the students that really shouldn't be there in the first place. That's kind of the reality of it.
yeah.
So yeah, I have deep frustrations with it, and I think that there are some institutions which are still doing it right. The
Mhm.
conservatoire in Birmingham, for example, seems to be maintaining like really high standards, which is great to see. And the atmosphere when you go into those places is drastically different, I find. I remember going to see a string quintet concert there recently, which was
At the
all
ACM?
no, at the
Oh, but
conservatoire in
at
Birmingham,
Birmingham, right.
which was all student arranged.
Yeah,
And there were students in the building in all the practice rooms practicing at like this was probably like 8 o'clock in the evening on a Saturday, and
yeah.
they're all there practicing. And I was just like,
Great.
that's exactly what
Yeah.
a music academy should be,
Mm,
basically.
yeah, yeah, and what was the concert like?
Great. It was great.
As it should be. So I went to
Exactly.
yeah, I went to the ACM, I think it's about 2 years ago now. I had one of the guests on who's a current tutor, and he invited me around. We'd had a walk round, and fucking hell, the place looks like it needs a lick of paint, and it needs some new screws. Fucking all the foam, soundproofing and sound treatment is all hanging off the walls. The practice rooms just look like they haven't been tidied since I was there, and it's just like, this is such a shame because you've got everything you need to have a really, really great music school and music academy, and it's just falling into disrepair. And but you're still charging people 10 grand a year to come here.
Yeah.
And they're probably leaving without the skills to go out and work in whichever sector they want to go and work in.
There's no probably about it. That's absolutely the case for the
Okay.
most part. Not that it's not there. The one thing I will say is that, in the time that I've taught at BIM, the staff have been excellent. We've had wonderful
Mm,
tutors. It's just, in my opinion, the biggest issue is probably the kind of entry process, meaning that the ability pool is far too broad,
yeah.
and it just gives the tutors like an insurmountable task, really, which means that it's never going to be the standard that it could be, I
Yeah.
suppose.
What do you think? So there's a couple of things I want to talk about before we move on. Like if someone was listening to this and either they're looking to send their child to one of these schools or they're looking to apply, if you went to either one of these college, any one of these music colleges with the right attitude, with the
Yep.
right skill set, is it
Yep.
still possible to come out of that school with having learned something that's worthwhile?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've got good tutors, then yes, absolutely. Because with any of these courses, ultimately it is what you make it.
Yeah.
So if you're going in there with the right attitude and you're making the most of the resources and the facilities and you're booking as many one-to-one tutorials with a breadth of tutors that you can every week,
Mm,
and you're getting advice on how to practice and what you should be studying and what books you should be reading,
yeah.
yeah, it can still be massively valuable. And I
Yeah.
think that, you know, students that come to mind for me, most of which I'm still in contact with and talking to, would probably say the same thing. I just
Yeah.
know that they've had their frustrations. They got to the end of their course and they were almost fatigued by frustration about how they'd felt held back by mostly by other students and
Right.
by the colleges were forced to sort of cater to them. That's kind of probably the biggest complaint that I sense, I think, apart
Yeah.
from infrastructural organization, which seems to have always been a plague of these places, is that organization seems to have been a
Yeah.
bit of a weak spot.
Do you think it's no, let me rephrase that. If you were in charge, how would you change it?
Wow. That's a massive question. I mean, I think obviously you would start with the admissions process, but I also think that, to be honest, when I was at ACM, apart from the fact that there was some disorganization within the general kind of structure, I felt like the courses themselves were really well planned out.
Yeah.
Particularly, I started on the high diploma course and then went up to the degree. And high diploma I thought was excellent. It was
Mm.
really well thought out. You had like this big, thick course book
Yeah.
every
Do you know what?
term.
I still have mine down
Yeah,
here.
me too, somewhere,
Yeah.
full of loads of really great transcriptions.
Yeah, yeah,
And, I think a return to something like that would be the way to do it. I do
yeah.
think that I'd put a real focus on, I'm talking as a guitar player now, that rather than more broadly, but a broader focus on like methodology. Because my one criticism, I suppose, of ACM when I was there was that with a lot of the theory and fretboard knowledge type stuff, it was kind of like, here's this scale, play this over this.
Yeah.
Or here's this arpeggio, play this over this. Or if you
Mm.
want an outside sound, play this over this. And I was never really satisfied with that as an answer because I wanted to know why. And I think that ultimately you have to know why and you have to understand all the underlying theory to be
Yeah.
able to make proper use of it. So I think putting like a lot of time into structuring something like that
Mm.
could make it absolutely brilliant. Yeah, because all the stuff that they do, really well is that these places often have great facilities. They often have good links to local industry and music venues, so they can provide lots of performance opportunities for
Mhm.
students.
Yeah.
And often they do have great tutors there.
Yeah.
So those things are all really strong, and they still remain a staple of many of these places. But it's just, dropping entry requirements, plummeting entry requirements rather, is definitely a massive, massive problem. And I think better structuring. The other thing that I've heard is that it seems like places like ACM in particular have been modifying their courses to keep up with the current cultural landscape, which
Mhm.
means diverting attention away from core skills like sight reading and into things like content creation. Content creation is important, but it's not more important than your fundamental skill set.
Yeah.
Even if you're an educator online, it's more important that your content is like academically robust and well structured and well communicated than it is that your video looks fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like it. So to me, decisions like that are a bit questionable.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll halt my tirade there.
No, no, don't. No, no. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. I think it might have even been Jim Clark who said this. He said that I think what we're going to see is a resurgence in very small music courses or music schools.
I hope so.
Like people that running a small music school from from my studio or from your studio. I think you're going to see a resurgence in that. If certainly if I had an extra 10 grand, I would rather spend it on finding 2 or 3 tutors and just spend a year filtering between those 3 tutors. Someone for technique, someone for maybe reading and pit work, someone for music theory or anything. I think that would be better spent.
Which is how most of these places started.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
form of that.
Well, I think the ACM started out the top of was it top of Anderton's or in the back of a fucking music shop?
I
I
heard
can't
something
remember.
similar. Yes.
Yeah. Right, yes. Yeah, I think standards going up needs to be the way forward because I don't think you can ever do anything bad in terms of education if you start raising standards. If the floor comes up,
No.
then you're just you just weed out all the shit.
No, there just needs to be some. I think ultimately, probably there needs to be some solidarity in terms of that as an idea,
Yeah.
so that you don't have one institution feeling like it's going to disadvantage itself by suddenly making auditions a lot more rigorous.
Yeah.
Because obviously, what could happen there is that you make the auditions a lot more challenging. Nobody either applies or gets in. Everybody goes to the other one, and
Yeah.
then you've
You
now
close your
lost a
doors.
load of funding and you close your doors. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what needs to happen. Everyone needs to close their doors and I don't know. Anyway, practice. Let's talk about practice. What does your practice look like these days?
It's a ever changing thing in some respects, but I would say that there are staples to it.
Mm.
So the way that I'm going to sort of preempt what I do by saying what I advocate other people do with their practice, which is starting with the end in mind. This was
Yeah.
something that I always used to say to students, where I would actually get them to step forward in time a few years and imagine what they wanted their life to look like as a professional musician, to the
Yeah.
extent of what does each day look like? What are you doing when you wake up on a Monday?
Mm.
What's your first gig of the week? What are you doing during the daytime? Are you writing library music? Are you teaching private sessions?
Yeah.
And once you have an idea of that in your mind, you interrogate each aspect of that portfolio and you ask yourself, what are the requisite skill sets for me to be able to do that job well?
Mm.
And if we say theatre, for example, then we're going to say sight reading, we're going to say fretboard knowledge, we're going to say styles, we're going to say you need to have a good handle on the tech side of it because you're going to be dealing with a lot of IEM or remote
Mhm.
pit situations. And then within each of those sub areas, you delve even deeper. And what I used to get them to do was to go really granular with it and say, with something like sight reading, if we break that down into its component parts of not just pitch, but pitch on treble clef, pitch on bass clef, ledger lines, time signatures, all this kind of stuff,
Mm.
and then get them to grade themselves on each area using like a traffic light system of, okay, I feel like I'm quite good with this, so this is a green. However, I suck at reading bass clef, so
Mm.
that's a red, so on and so forth. And if you go through that exercise, which initially you only have to do that once, kind of tells you what your practice routine should be.
Yeah.
And then it's a case of kind of acquiring the necessary learning resources to help you with those things, finding out what are the most sort of well established sight reading books, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
So I've always taken like a similar approach with my practice, I suppose, in that it's quite compartmentalized these days. I mean, it always bends around whatever is going on with in the week. But if I have like a clear week and I have the time, then generally speaking, it's divided between some sight reading, fretboard knowledge, technique, and then either vocabulary or repertoire.
Yeah.
So I sort of keep kind of like a thing I picked up from Carl Verheyen. Carl uses volumes and volumes of lick books that he's
Mm.
written for himself over the
Yeah.
years. I started doing that and then I turned it into something that I use on my Patreon called Top Draw Licks.
Yeah.
So I've got, dozens and dozens of phrases that go up there, but they're also part of my practice routine as well. And then applying them within different improvisational contexts or going back through old repertoire, Dan Huff solos, Steve Lukather stuff, Landau
Mm.
stuff, whatever it may be. So that's kind of like the staple. And then there's a lot of transcription as a part of it because of the YouTube stuff, because it's all focused around session players, the 80s and 90s. It means that I'm transcribing a lot of that sort of stuff. So a lot of like pop repertoire and
Yeah.
solos from that kind of period. And then there's other areas which I sort of delve into as a treat when I have the
Mm.
time. I'd absolutely love gypsy jazz,
Okay. Yeah.
which mutual friend John Wheatcroft is obviously
Mm.
an absolute ninja
Yeah.
in. But I love that, but it's something I nearly never seem to have the ability to prioritize because it's not something I'm going to be paid to do anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of the
Only because it takes so long to get so good at it. Obviously,
yeah.
John is a master, but for me, I'm still. It's such a different technique, physically speaking.
Mm.
You have to kind of be doing it all the time. John did something brilliant actually, which is that I'm pretty sure he transcribed like a Django Reinhardt every single day for phrase every single day for a whole year
Wow. Okay.
and posted it up online. And that's exactly probably how you have to do it. But
Yeah.
for the time being, gypsy jazz is on the back burner.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I always have these ideas of, do you know what? I'm going to get this under my belt. I'm going to have a go at this. Like it usually revolves either around country or jazz. And I'm not a great player in either of those genres. So it's always something that I love to work on as like you said, like a treat, but I'm not going to get paid to do any of those as a player. But
I imagine
yeah,
you have bits of it within your musical theatre work, though, right?
yeah. There'll be a thing that will say like guitar solo, country-esque, Albert Lee-ish. And you're like, okay, well, I've got a couple of things that I can do. Yeah, it's like you've got to be on it every day. Like I spent a week, I think, learning what's the fucking guy? Not Brent Mason, Brad Paisley. I was
Hmm.
learning a Brad Paisley solo. I thought I had it down. I just double checked the tempo and I was doing it at half speed. And even at half speed, I'm like, God, this is a workout. And I was like, right, fucking hell, man. Are you serious? And it was like 210 BPM in minims or something. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. He's a monster, wonderful player.
Absolutely insane. But yeah, I love just dipping into it if I've got the time. But yeah, with 2 kids and a thing and with things and the sessions and if you've got any teaching and then it's just hard to get the time. But and what about getting better? What's your perception on getting better and how's that changed over the years?
Man, I mean, for me, as I'm sure with everybody, the practice question is one that I'll never have the answer to in terms of, there is so much that I want to explore, and I have a transcription list as long as my arm and all these things that I want to delve into. So it's really a case of just inching my way through that stuff while exercising a certain degree of maintenance and what I already know. I don't have a brilliant capacity for memorizing repertoire, so I have to kind of periodically come back round to things to get it back under my hands again.
Mm,
But I mean, it's getting better is an endless pursuit, isn't it?
yeah.
It's not something where we're ever going to reach an end point of. And really, it's less about getting better, but how efficient you are in doing so.
Okay.
And I think this is where people like Jim are worth their weight in gold, because that appears to be Jim's whole thing, is that
Yeah.
often he's working with really good players. He's taught a number of people that I'm either friends with or have
Mm,
been lucky enough to work with in some capacity, and they're phenomenal players.
yeah.
And so Jim occupies a role as this kind of sensei of,
Mm,
you're already great, but let's look at how we can be more efficient, how we can get more out of your technique, how we can get you speaking more fluidly in terms of your musical ideas. So that kind of becomes the challenge, is a mixture of like efficiency and maintenance, I
mhm.
think. And also just think remaining blinkered to your own goals, because there's the one thing that's a blessing and a curse with the current environment is that you're bombarded with content
Yeah.
continuously. And there is this feeling, which I'm sure you can relate to, that you'll see something and you'll go, I should,
I need to
I
do
should be able to
that.
do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, you definitely don't. You definitely don't
Yeah.
need to be doing, four finger tapped sweet picking. Nobody's going to be paying you to do that.
Yeah.
But there is this, it definitely stokes the fires of, I don't even know if it's competition necessarily, but it's something like that. So I think remaining focused is an absolute superpower these days. And
Yeah.
it's really challenging. And, I think many of us probably have this perpetual impending sense of dread that we are somehow falling behind.
Mm,
And so, to some extent, shutting that voice out and just focusing on what you know is important to you,
yeah.
to help you become the best version of what you want to be and to help you establish your voice. That's what's really important. So yeah, and that's an ongoing challenge. It's just a case of trying things out and trying to implement little disciplines
Mm,
here and there to try and stay as focused as possible.
yeah. You mentioned like efficiency in practice. Is there anything that you do to make your learning more efficient or your practice more efficient?
Yeah, I mean, I think having a blueprint and an outline of the things that you know that you need to work on is really important, so that
Yeah.
when you're sitting down and you have the time to play, that you're not going, what should I do today?
Yeah.
That you already have, like I mentioned earlier, I kind of have everything categorized, but within those categories is like a big list of like different topics that I know that
Mm,
I want to work on, and the sort of accompanying books or videos or whatever that I need to delve into in order to work on that thing. So there's some expediency that you gain with being organized in that respect, I
yeah.
guess. And then of course there's like the broader sort of trope of focusing more time on what you know that you actually need to get better at, rather than simply repeating the things you're really good at, which is really hard because
Yeah.
we're all creatures of fragile ego,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
nobody wants to sit playing stuff they suck at for 3 hours. But yeah,
That's kind of what you got to do, and I do say that to my students. Like I had one kid that came back because we started the term back up this week. His mum sent me an email, and she said like I think he's waning a little bit. Like so I spoke to him, and he said something to the tune of, it's just it's kind of difficult. moving between G, D, and E minor and C. Like, I'm just finding it a little difficult to move between some of them. I was like, yeah, no, I get that. Like, C to D is a particularly tricky change because you've got to move all three fingers. None of them you can use as a pivot or an anchor. I said, but the thing is that you have to accept, and I say this to everybody, is that first of all, playing an instrument, particularly guitar, is hard. It's not easy. Our hands aren't designed, or they didn't evolve to do this.
Bit
Gripping
like
and
that.
holding, that's what our hands and our fingers are for. So we're asking a lot of our hands, and in truth, it's going to sound bad and it's going to hurt a little bit for a good couple of months. But the more you kind of sit down and do it, eventually the easier it becomes. And then it just becomes like walking and talking and breathing. You should be able to do it without thinking. I said, but you do have to accept that it's going to suck for a bit. And it's hard because you're growing up in a world where anything that you want is available almost instantly. Whether it's a TV show, a movie, you order a new pair of shoes, it'll probably be here the next day. So this delayed gratification is a new concept with you, and you just have to kind of sit with it and push through it. That's all you got to do. Hopefully it got through. I don't know. We'll see. Only time will tell. There's a couple of things I really want to ask you before I let you go. You mentioned books. Any books you recommend, either for reading technique or anything like that?
The two Guthrie Govan books,
Mm,
Creative Guitar 1 and 2, were my Bible throughout ACM, and they still usually carry them around in my bag every day, and just think as a comprehensive resource, they haven't really been bettered, in my opinion.
yeah.
Those two. The Ted Green books, though frustrating in their lack of structure, are
Yeah.
very inspiring to delve
Yeah.
to delve into, even just to pull out a few voicings. They're
Yeah.
great. Finding recently, obviously discovering some of the what are they called? I want to say fundamental changes. Is that right? There's a publisher who's been doing books with lots and lots and lots of players over the
Yes.
last
Yes. Yes.
few
Yes.
years.
Yeah.
Probably got it wrong, but it's something like that.
I think you're right. It is.
Some of those are really good. There's some that Sean Baxter has done, which are really nicely structured. I picked up a couple of Oz Noy books, which,
Mm,
again, the ones that I gravitate towards are the ones that are really strongly structured and not just like, here's some licks. And I
yeah.
never found that particularly helpful. There's quite a method to Oz's approach, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously, great resources to be found at places like Jam Track Central or TrueFire, but it's really just finding the instructors that resonate with you.
Hmm.
I want to say his name is Tim Allen, a Berkeley guitar player and instructor, who again has got a really nice approach to education. I always go back to the old Scott Henderson, what would have been
Mm,
VHSs, now DVDs. I think there's an awful lot to be harvested from those, an awful lot. So
yeah.
yeah, those would be my sort of first ports of call, I think.
Yeah.
Transcription is like humongously important. So whatever you're doing in terms of books, you should be doing almost an equal amount in terms of transcribing other players, I think, and
Yeah.
analyzing.
And when you transcribe, are you writing, notating them down, or are you just transcribing them to memory?
No, I write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to do it all by hand, but I do it all in Guitar Pro now,
Okay.
which is really good for having both standard notation, but all of the different like guitaristic articulations.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good program. So pretty much everything is done in there for me.
Okay. Do you like your playing?
No, who does?
I've asked so many people this. Well, actually, no. But thinking back, I've probably only asked this about 3 or 4 times, but I should ask it more. Most people say no, which I find odd. Like I heard someone asked the question, like, how many guitar players would you have to name if someone asked you who's your favorite? How many guitar players would you name until you named yourself? I was like, oh, it's an interesting thought. Hmm. Yeah.
No,
There are days where I think, yeah, I'm doing all right, and there are days where I'm like, I should just fucking pack this shit in.
I
And I'm
can.
sure that's what most people feel like that.
Yeah, I can tolerate my own writing. Tracks that I'll write for YouTube or Instagram, or what I write that's not even remotely guitar centric, that's more aimed towards film music. I can live with that stuff usually. I can still derive some degree of enjoyment from it if I revisit it at some point. But
Mm,
playing's a tricky one, man. I think many of us have a very, very stern inner critic, detrimentally so, probably.
mm,
I think there's a degree of perfectionism that can become kind of crushing to the point where anything you play, you're loudly being criticized from within.
Yeah, I don't know. I disagree. There's a couple of people that I look at and watch on Instagram that don't have that critic, and they're happy to put out whatever they feel like. And I'm like, all right, if you don't want to tune that G string, that's fine. I'm gonna tune it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a blessing and a curse, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
it's having a internal quality control. I think is really important, and I think
yeah,
ultimately that is the thing that pushes you forward and forward and forward and forward. But that it just you just have to not allow it to become debilitating. Because I heard a story of Alan Holdsworth where in his latter years he was so hard on himself that he could barely play anymore, like
mm,
couldn't perform publicly, obviously putting out music became like a massive ordeal. And he's one of the most phenomenal guitar players who's ever lived, but that
mm,
voice in him was so strong that it probably ruined music for him.
yeah,
So learning to keep it in check is really important. Sometimes simply having some time away from the guitar is a really good way to do that. I find that if I have a weekend where me and my girlfriend go away and I haven't touched the guitar for 4 or 5 days and I come back, I like my playing the most within that first 20-minute period of picking it back up. And then the critic obviously
yeah,
comes back online.
yeah. It can be just a fucking asshole. That little voice that just don't put that out. People are going to laugh at it. Don't put that out. That's going to be terrible. Oh, your bends are slightly out. Oh dear. But I think in reality, someone said just do it and then polish it later.
Well, there's
But I
a,
think
go on. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to, but there's a fine line between that. Like just start and it'll get better later. If you're putting out stuff that is like it's slightly out of tune, that's unacceptable. Phrasing is slightly wobbly. Maybe we could polish that later. But depending on how awful it is, yeah, I don't know.
I think most people who are doing it as a job, I would hope, are not going to be putting stuff out where they're out of tune or whatever.
Mm,
But there's a videographer I really like called Peter McKinnon
yeah.
who talks about this, and he basically tries to, or at one point was trying to keep himself to a commitment of every week or every couple of times in each week you're putting something out,
Mm,
and that's non-negotiable. People say the same things about like running if they're runners,
yeah.
that it's not even a decision they have to make every morning. They're just, before they even know it, they're tying their laces and they're out in the cold or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think to some extent adopting a discipline like that is really useful
Yeah.
because you can talk yourself out of absolutely anything and you'll just get
I
to a point
certainly
where you
can. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Somebody said don't sit down because once you sit down, you can't get back up. In fact, I heard a really interesting story. Like, I'm a little bit of a World War II history buff.
Cool.
And I heard this story about a guy who joined the SAS. And he said that when he was on selection, he was the smallest guy there and he was stood next to these 6'2" fucking paratroopers. And he's like, he's looking down the line. He's like, shit, man, how the hell am I going to get through this? It was a month of like trekking through the Brecon Beacons. And he said, I put my rucksack on, which the weight gets heavier every week. It gets heavy. It goes up to like 80 pounds, like ridiculous. And he said that when we started the march, all I did was put one foot in front of the other. I didn't think about the end. I didn't think about how much it hurt. It was just one foot in front of the other. Try and do it as fast as I possibly can. And he said after about a week, like within the first day, like he was seeing these guys sitting down and like, I'm out. It's like, right, okay. As soon as I saw someone sit down, it was like, you're not getting back up. Don't sit down because if you sit down, you'll never get back up. One foot in front of the other. And although I think that's an extreme take on practicing and getting better for music, there's definitely a value in just do it.
Yeah,
Just
I
do it.
totally agree. There's a massive risk to being so overwhelmed by all the things that you should be doing that actually you end up doing nothing. And
Yeah.
something is always better than nothing.
Yeah. And I mean, you touched on it with the amount of content that we take in every day. Like you'll see a 12-year-old kid from Japan playing a Steve Vai piece, and then you see someone doing this blazing country lick. Then you see someone else doing this classical thing, or 12 5-year-old kids from South Korea playing in perfect tune and perfect harmony and perfect
Yes.
time. You're like, fucking hell, man! That it can get overwhelming. But I think what you said about just finding like a small list of these are the skills that I need to work on. This is what I think that idea of look at yourself a couple of years down the line is a great thing, a great thought experiment. What
Yeah,
are the skills?
be blinkered, be
Mm,
stubborn.
yeah, what are the skills that you're going to need in 5 years to do the thing that you need to be able to do, and just work on that now, and try and filter out all of that other noise. The last thing I'll ask, what is the best piece of advice you've given, and what's the best piece of advice you've got or gotten?
Man,
Got or gotten?
it wasn't so much well, okay, there's one piece of advice I received that's always stuck with me, and also my dad always remembers it because it amuses him greatly, where in the open day at what was called Guitar X at the time,
Yeah.
John Wheatcroft said, two pieces of advice for being a professional musician: learn to drive and don't be a dickhead.
Yeah.
And that's always stuck with me and amused me greatly because it's so true.
Yeah.
But the probably one of the most meaningful things for me was when I was having tutorials with Mike Caswell
Yeah.
at ACM. And it wasn't anything so much that he said as there was just, I was getting to a point that I often get to where I become so self-critical that it becomes debilitating and actually my playing becomes really sort of sterile. And there was just this kind of nurturing thing that he did. And it was literally in real time. He would just encourage me. He was talking about flow
Mm.
and he was just getting me to continue improvising no matter what, basically, to just keep going, to keep connecting it. And it just had such a profoundly transformative effect of helping me to break out of my bullshit, basically.
Yeah.
That was one of the most useful learning experiences I think I've ever had.
Yeah.
And I mean, in terms of giving advice, that's a really tough one because it depends on the individual,
Mm.
I think. I mean, what I would say these days, this is not necessarily a piece of advice I've given anyone specifically, but it's something I've heard a lot recently and it resonates, which is that I think focus is a superpower
Mm.
in today's world. So I think cultivating that as a skill, the ability to be able to focus deeply on something and shut the world out is increasingly going to be a superpower. So that is the thing alongside everything else that you should really focus on cultivating, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think focusing, even for me, like sitting down to watch a movie, the call of the telephone or the call of the mobile is like, let's just see what's going on thing. Like, I haven't missed anything in the last half an hour. Nothing world changing has happened in the last 26 minutes. You can live
Although
without
these
seeing.
days, could have.
Fucking hell, yeah. But yeah, that's a podcast for another time.
Oh, quite.
Yeah, I think that ability to just to sit and do nothing. Like doing nothing feels like cheating. I don't know.
It doesn't feel like cheating to me. It feels painful. You know,
Yeah.
and this is where the whole mindfulness thing comes in. Learning to sit with yourself,
Mm.
again, is a really important skill. And I highly encourage anybody to take that up as a practice as well if they haven't already. It's very useful.
Yeah, I would agree. Listen, I will let you get on with whatever you've got going on today. Richard, thank you so much for coming on. I really
Pleasure.
appreciate the time. Cool. Listen, thank you so much for your time. Great to talk, and
Pleasure, man.
we will stay in touch.
All right, Tim.
Cheers, mate.
Great to see you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much. Bye bye.